Pavel, did you move to the next one?
Yes, it's on it right now.
Okay. People are typing, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Civilization, a complex society characterized by organization. Interesting. Some people think that civilization is technology as itself, which I would probably agree with largely. Society, a lot of people, culture makes civilization. Yeah, Indonesia is definitely a civilization on itself. Okay. Do keep in mind that the questions will remain open for a while, so you can still submit and we will review them later. And so the next question is, what do you think a digital civilization is? Let's try to set up the grounds for the conversation and for the rest of the presentation. What would you think, in contrast, what is a digital civilization? I'm going to keep looking at the other answers meanwhile. It's interesting. There's some interesting concepts in the civilization answer, indicating that there's the idea of growth. A lot of technology involved in the answers. I've seen 2 or 3 answers as well that point out to character and personality. Let's see what there is in the. Okay, so digital civilization is social media. That's an interesting take. If we consider social media as the almost instant communication between different members of a community or of a civilization itself, that's not necessarily a bad answer, as opposed to what could be the first. It may not be such a simple answer as it looks like at first impression. A digital civilization is a society that relies heavily on digital technology to communicate, work, create, and share information. Pretty much, yes, as well. This one is interesting to me. A civilization that has migrated from the physical realm, atoms, to the information realm, bits. That is actually quite accurate. It's a very good way to look at it. Pavel will have something to say about the concept of digital twins and what elements of that you will have to keep in mind in the coming years. All right. So please keep it coming. I'm loving the answers that we are receiving. I think a lot of them are very interesting, and there's going to be a lot to look into. So I want to discuss, to set up a little bit more as well, the conversation with this concept. Is everyone, can you please in the chat make comments as to whether you are or not familiar with the terms of coding? So coding is basically programming. And for those of you who have a technology background, of course, this is not going to be new. For those of you who may not, basically what you do is you learn a language with a certain amount of statements and operators, and you build a piece of software. You type an algorithm, you type a solution that you think that you have against a given problem. You will pass that file to what's called a compiler, which is another piece of software that will generate a number of ones or zeros that will be then used by your devices to run an application. Now, until now, we were using this. I still have a difficulty to actually to say this word because this was just happening yesterday. It's such a recent change in the way we do programming that I'm having a difficulty of saying that it is traditional because it's so around the corner. The traditional way is what I was saying before. We would be taking that information, taking those files, passing them to a compiler, and generating a piece of software. In other words, we're prompting a compiler. And if you don't know what a prompt is, I will get into that soon enough. Now, what we're doing right now, and of course, eventually, and this is going to be more for the technical people, you may also know that we used to do this compilation part, and then we moved into much more interpreted languages. And there's a difference between the two of them, but it really doesn't make much of an importance for this particular talk. Now, the current thing that we are doing at the moment is prompting what we like to call genies. And we call them genies because it's essentially a piece of software that you will know as ChatGPT or other LLM models out there. We prefer to call them genies in general because they seem to be granting you wishes. And really the technology behind them, whether it's going to be a transformer or any other thing that is going to come down the line, doesn't really matter. It's just a generic piece of software or a category of software that we call genies that is able to generate an output based on the input that you provide to them in natural language, in whether it is English, Bahasa Indonesia, or whichever. And it's interesting because now we are able to express the information or the problem that we are trying to solve, and this genie will try to figure it out and come up with a solution. Now, this is not to say that at the moment, those genies are perfect. Far from that. They are, in fact, not as good as one would hope for, seeing all the hype that you can see online. I can, however, confirm that the MVP, so the actual use case, is this something that is going to be useful for humans? The answer is yes. In fact, the Linux kernel group has already announced just a few days ago that part of the Linux distributions, the core Linux kernel distribution does have AI-generated code. It has been accepted. And this is a very common currency nowadays in anyone who is programming. Typically, they call it vibe coding, which I don't think is a very suitable term. And where does this lead us? So LLMs, the term LLM stems from large language model. And like I said, it's just a piece of software in the category of genies that provides you with the ability of quite fast and quite accurately, to a certain degree, provides you with an answer or a solution to a problem that you are inputting. And that input, the way that you express that input, is what we call a prompt. So for instance, solve me this particular problem that I have, or analyze this document and extract from it statistics that I need, whichever is. You can imagine that just as if I was asking a question, if I was asking a favor to someone, for instance, to my colleague Pavel, I needed him to go and pick up something for me. The more accurate the instructions as to what do I need him to do for me, the better he will be able to perform that task. If I just tell him, I need you to go and pick up something, he will probably ask me, what is it that you need me to pick me up? What does it look like? Where is it? What do I need to go and pick it up? Is it dangerous to me? What are the circumstances for the purpose of the actual action that you are asking me to perform? And so if I start giving him those extra informations, I'm providing him with better context for him to understand what is the task that is required of him. And so you can imagine that the better the prompt, the better the definition of that task, the better the output is going to be. Now, looking into what I was mentioning before of prompt run, so vibe coding, I actually prefer the term called prompt run applications. So you will be generating a piece of software that will serve you in any purpose. It could be a social media platform. It could be a calculator that you need. It could be a piece of software to maintain the, let's say, your home economy, or to do online banking, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. What we are moving into, and this is increasing on a daily basis, is towards applications that are exclusively being generated through prompts. Now, the question is then, if we can do that with applications, why can we not do that with something else? Is that the limit? Well, not really. Protocols, which are the things that make technology function, are also going into that direction. But should we stop there? Likely not. There's no argument as to why you would want to stop there. It's very, very likely that we're going to have in the near future what we call prompt run organizations. And you know, the funny part of all this conversation is that it is not as if it's not happening again in ever since we started interacting with each other. What do you think I'm doing in this presentation? I'm essentially prompting you. So me and my colleagues came to this presentation trying to provide you with knowledge and information and curiosity, and to try to instill some interest on how technology is built on a daily basis and how it may be built in the future. That means that I have to express those ideas as best as I can. So the ideas that I'm having in the black box of my head, I have to translate them and explain them to you. And hopefully you will capture them and start thinking. That's the output that I'm expecting. If I express myself poorly, if I speak another language, if I speak in French right now, you would not understand what I'm saying, and I would not achieve the objective that I want, which is to get a reaction of interest out of you. Now, what is, let's say, for instance, since you are in a university environment, what are the codes of behavior of a university? What are the regulations in terms of how the syllabus of your studies? What are the procedures to be able to apply for a fellowship? All of those are basically prompts. All the admin that runs the university itself is also defined in standard operating procedures, bylaws, whichever documents that basically manage the organization. Those are basically prompts, which at the moment are being consumed by humans. And you hope that the output of that particular human interaction with those prompts is as best as possible so that everything is run smoothly. So if you think about it, there's no actually much difference as to what's coming to what we already have in terms of the underlying understanding of what an organization is and how it works. And you very, very likely going to have in the coming years organizations that are going to be run exclusively on prompts. And shocker, this is one thing that we are investigating and testing in our organization itself. But the question is, if we are able to run organizations, why you stop there? Logic tells you that's not the end of it. You start having the possibility of running governments with prompts, because what are laws if not prompts themselves? The law is essentially a way trying to explain to you how you are expected to behave in a given society. And that brings you to a digital civilization by necessity. Now, for those of you who may not know who Arthur C. Clarke is, this was a very famous science fiction writer in the past. You may have heard about 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is a book that was written by him, famously put into a movie by Stanley Kubrick in the 60s, I believe. And he said this, he said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I find that to be very interesting, because if you think about it, someone from, let's say, 50, 60 years ago, you would present them with the remote control of your TV, and they would definitely think that there is magic. Just because you got used to technology doesn't mean that it's not exceptionally amazing. And what's going to happen is we're going to move into a universe where everyone is loaded of the prompts. What we are building is the magic abstraction layer. We are building a series of software that is going to allow us to go and express ourselves and request things to that infrastructure layer, and it will produce outputs for us. I will be able to request, if I have a problem, to build a software on the spot to be able to solve that problem. Now, the interesting part was that in the quest for the ring, the fellowship was not just Aragorn and the hobbits. They actually needed a magician. They needed a wizard. They brought Gandalf with them. Why? Because despite the fact that Aragorn was very good with his swords, he is not able to invoke elementals. He is not able to use the magic of the Middle Earth. What that means is that even wizards need to know the spells. It doesn't matter that the magic is there. It doesn't matter that the technology is there. It doesn't matter that I have a remote control for my TV. If I don't know how to use my remote, it's useless to me and to anybody. So if we are going to be moving into an environment where prompting is going to be the way that you will things, we will need to learn how to do those things, how to perfect our spells. Because after all, spells are also a prompt. When Gandalf invokes an elemental, he's basically prompting the magical environment to be able to obtain an elemental to rise. So if you start looking into, if you stack all of these things, ignore the left part, because this slide is basically an hour and a half of conversation on itself, and we don't have the time for that. But if you want to synthesize what I just said in a kind of a diagram of how this stacks together, you can consider that layer one on the right side, on the digital space side, the first layer on the bottom, the core algorithms, is essentially how the technology is built at the physical level, if you will, from a technology perspective, you would think about motherboards, the hardware, and the firmware, which is a very, very low level communication with that particular hardware. Then you would have protocols, what makes those devices able to communicate among them and create larger networks of technology. On top of that, you would have that abstraction layer that I was mentioning of PRAs, prompt-run applications, PROs, prompt-run organizations, and PRGs, prompt-run governments. And the final layer from our perspective is the user interface. So how do you get to interact with all those three layers? And that user interface is you, how it is presented to you. And so you should start thinking about what is going to be the way that you interact with that particular stack, with that particular reality that is looming on us. And from this, I will be moving to my colleague, Pavel. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And if it's okay, I'd like you to help me with the slides. So thank you so much for that. So good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi. John has given us a blueprint for the digital civilization. The roads, the buildings, the laws. He spoke about the vast infrastructure that underpins our lives. And now I want to get a bit deeper, moving from the infrastructure to the most critical component, which is the raw material that builds everything. And of course, the citizens that live within it. So every civilization has an entity in the physical world, that's you, that's your body. But in the digital world, that entity is our focus, which is the digital twin. So we'll get into it. John, next slide, please. Once again, I'd like to remind everyone, if they have not joined the Mentimeter yet, that it'd be very beneficial to you to join the Mentimeter and join the conversation, as we will put up some of the prompts from time to time as we keep presenting simultaneously. So if you have not joined yet, please do join. And I believe the next question is going to be about data. John, next slide, please. So if you're on the Mentimeter, I believe you will be seeing, what do you think is data? So while you do answer the question, I will tell you a bit about what, according to us, is data. So before we meet the digital twin, we must understand its DNA, which is data. For too long, we have used simple analogies. We have used data as a commodity, but data is far more dangerous and far more fundamental than that. Because data is simply raw, unconscious, factual input. Think of it as a scattered puzzle pieces. Each piece is like a neutral, a timestamp, a location pane, a search query, right? But its true power lies not in one piece, but in its collection of pieces as a combination. So when thousands of pieces are brought together, they stop being neutral, and instead they create a more powerful predictive picture. And if you control this raw material, if you control the data, then you control the civilization. John, next slide, please. So now there's a fallacy, which is I have nothing to hide. Now, this is a control that leads us to the biggest misconception about digital privacy. I'm sure a lot of you who are students may have heard at least once in your lifetime someone saying that, oh, I don't have to worry about privacy because I have nothing to hide, right? But this view itself is fundamentally wrong because privacy is not about hiding bad behavior. It's about power and control. So when your data is collected and centralized, it's used by these powerful systems, by companies, by big tech, by governments to predict and categorize you. So it limits your future options, perhaps denying you a loan because of an algorithm's guess about your stability or filtering the information you see. But the primary risk is the loss of your autonomy as a free citizen. So it's not about hiding something, it's about preventing big tech, it's about preventing systems from being built that can control your options without your knowledge or consent. So, John, next slide, please. So to govern data effectively, we need to accept three hard truths about data. The first thing is data is not conscious. So it has no ethics, it has no moral compass. It'll be used for whatever purpose or algorithm it needs to be used for. And secondly, data never expires or decays on its own. So the location ping from your phone 5 years ago can be combined with a health search today and to create a new profile. And you may have forgotten that you logged in somewhere 5 years ago, but everything on the internet always remains there. So data doesn't know when it's being used or repurposed, but it remains forever unless you explicitly enforce its disruption. And finally, in today's age of rapid AI processing, we rely a lot on data trails, audit trails, but then, that's a fool's errand because you can't trace data's journey across thousands of servers and algorithms, but we must still rely instead on privacy by design, which is building security and ethics in before the system goes live and through proactive governance. Next slide, please. So this brings me to our topic, digital twins. So if data is raw material, the final product of that data is you, the citizen in the digital world, the digital twin. So the digital twin is a continuously updated, living, predictive, virtual representation of your habits, your preferences, and movements. So if you use any banking apps, or if you're on social media, if you're using any public services, which you rely on, that's you. It is the entity that lives and acts within the digital infrastructure, as John described. Your physical life is increasingly being governed by your virtual life. Next slide, please. So this brings us directly and powerfully to the core themes of this webinar, right? Mental health and well-being. So why does protecting virtual entity matter so much? But before I do that, if you can go to the Mentimeter, you will see, I'm pretty sure a lot of students may have been hearing this question for the first time. Do you know what a digital twin is? So I have explained it to you before, but did you know from before? So if you would like to answer that, I put that on the Mentimeter. And I'll continue with talking about why protecting your digital twin matters so much. Because your digital twin is vulnerable. Because if you lose control, you gain anxiety, right? That's the problem. So think about algorithmic anxiety. the thing is, low stress level from being watched, categorized and filtered by opaque AI-driven rules. Think about when you are on Facebook, when you're on Instagram, and you're seeing these ads, right? You're seeing some ads about something you had just talked about with your friends, maybe a pair of new shoes that you want to buy, some Nike sneakers, and suddenly in a matter of seconds, you're scrolling through your TikTok and you're getting ads for it. So this, when I think this is what we call algorithmic anxiety, the fact that a system that you can't see or challenge can actually dictate what kind of ads you're seeing. Then of course there's the threat of a fake twin. We live in a world today where there is an ultimate violation of privacy, and it is not just about the data leak, but it's a fear of sophisticated deep fakes, which is a completely fabricated online profile, or as we like to call it, a fake twin. It's created from your data, but it's not really you. Somebody has compromised your data, and now they're going to use your profile to perhaps ruin your reputation or even steal your money from the banking app. So this is a threat to psychological security. And this is why it's so important for your digital well-being to be maintained. And protecting the digital twin is therefore a fundamental act of self-care. It reduces anxiety and restores citizen control. Next slide, please. John? Okay, great. So now the threats to our digital twins come from two sides. So one is our own digital neglect, and then there are powerful systemic harms. So when we talk about internal threat or neglect, it's, what we do is sometimes we overshare. We reuse the same passwords. We click agree without reading the terms and conditions. I'm sure that a lot of us, including me, we have been too lazy to read the terms and conditions because it's too long. And so we are signing away without reading anything. So the systemic harms, these are more external, the data breaches, the ransomware attacks, and the coordinated creation of fake twins. So this one is out of our control, but we can do as much as possible to protect ourselves, because how do we defend ourselves? We must become digital architects. We have to practice data scarcity, enforce strong identity control, use multi-factor authentication, and finally, we must demand systems to allow us to truly delete our twins' data and move it freely. But all of these defenses are challenged by one massive force. And we'll get to that. John, next slide, please. So John introduced the complexity of the infrastructure. He introduced the prompt run organizations and the core processes, which are driven by AI and LLMs, which make decisions at a massive scale and speed. So your digital twin is constantly interacting with this opaque global prompt run organizations. They could be their new banks, their new media outlets, and their new governance systems. So this centralized global and highly accelerated power demands immediate response in how we design our social rules. And this is where we're going to talk about the next section of this presentation, which is about AI governance and policy. Next slide, please. Yep, one more. Right. So AI governance challenge. Oh, back, please. One slide back. Nope. Okay. One more slide back. Okay, cool. So the central problem in privacy in an AI world is AI is global in its reach, but its privacy impacts are intensely local. So, when we hear about the Brussels effect, where the European Union sets a standard like the EU AI Act, and then the rest of the world feels pressured to copy it. But while the EU AI Act offers an excellent template, simply copy pasting Western regulations and legislation into Southeast Asia would be a mistake because it ignores our local culture and economy. So we must find the balance between global standards for technology and local ethics for our citizens. So how do we do that? And there are three concepts that I'd like to follow for us to do that. Next slide, please. So the first is we must talk about contextualizing risk to protect digital twins, right? So for example, what is considered high risk in Paris could be different from what is high risk in Jakarta, right? In Southeast Asia, we rely heavily on AI for microfinancing, for agriculture planning, for even disaster management, right? If a PRO's model determines credit worthiness for our farmer, but then it's biased against the demographics, then that model is not just flawed, but it's inflicting a severe privacy harm and creating financial exclusion for that farmer. And this directly violates the whole digital twin's right to fairness. So we must create a framework that explicitly identifies these local high-risk sectors and demands that we have privacy in an AI world which is relevant to the people that it serves. Secondly, is the issue of data sovereignty and representation. So this is about protecting cultural privacy of the digital twin. We unfortunately live in a world where a lot of these LLMs are trained on data from the global north, mostly in English. So when they're trained in English, they come with Western cultural norms. So when we import the model, we kind of risk importing the values, the Western values and biases into a Southeast Asian context, which doesn't align with ours. So what do? We must ensure that we have inclusive data training, right? We need to ensure that the AI that we're deploying in Southeast Asia here understands the languages. For example, Bahasa Indonesia, Thai, Vietnamese, and Tagalog, not just as translations, but as languages within the cultural nuances. So we need to govern these inputs because this is how we move from being not just consumers of AI, but we are actually creators of AI. And finally, in terms of balancing interoperability, right? The solution is very simple. We have to separate the technical from the ethical. We align on a lot of international technical standards, such as IEEE 7000 series, which defines the ethical and robust system design. But then we must also understand compatibility, the fact that our software is safe, transparent, and it must work everywhere. But we reserve the right to define these ethical boundaries and applications based on our own cultural values. And this is how we're going to maintain data sovereignty. We'll protect the privacy of our digital twins and make sure that it is culturally sustainable. So now I'll hand back to John, and then we'll move into the workshop where hopefully you'll learn more about what we have for you today. Thank you. Back to you, John. You're on mute. John, you're on mute.
I did press the button. I don't know what happened. I was saying that I would like to pause for 1-2 minutes to check if there's any questions in the chat, and I'm wondering, Bismo, if you can advise us as to whether the participants can also take the microphone in case anyone wants to ask a question directly.
Sure. For the participants, if you have any questions, you can directly write it on the chat box, or you can open up your mic and ask the question for Jan or Pavel. Maybe this is one question from Dimas Puji Basuki, that he asking a question: how can organization or governments ensure that the development of digital civilization not only focus on technological efficiency, but it is also inclusive for less digital literate groups. We want to answer it directly, Jack?
Yes. So the interesting part of that question is that it's not new. That's the kind of question that you would ask for any single new industry or technology that is being developed on a daily basis. And it's always the case of as to try to figure out how far would that industry go and how much it is providing a service that is valuable to us versus the possible challenges or negative effects that it may have. You think about processed food, for instance, or you may think about the clothing industry as to the different dyes, whether they might be dangerous for people to wear or not, or very, very useful for combating cold or to combat heat. So every single industry that is going to be developed does have the same challenges. This is not different. When it comes to what would be the best way to confront those challenges, in our perspective, the ones that should be paying attention to this, the ones who should be the frontliners of the solutions, is the people who architect and implement the technology. In the same way that I'm hoping that the architects and the masons that put together buildings in which I'm going to step in are the ones who are principally concerned with making sure that those buildings are not going to collapse on my head. And my responsibility will be to use that building in a responsible manner, say, not setting it on fire, for instance, but I leave the responsibility of the structural responsibility of the building to the people who are professionals in that particular sector, because otherwise I have to be getting a master degree on architecture every time I'm walking into a different building. That is not a very reasonable approach. Every time that I need to drive a new car and make sure that it's safe for me, I have to get an engineering masterclass to be able to make sure that the brakes of this particular model do function as well as other models that I was driving 2 weeks ago. That would not be a practical approach for nobody. And so if we are outsourcing this kind of responsibilities to people who are professional and are expected to know what is it that they are doing, our job should be to make sure that their educational pipeline provides them with the knowledge and the tools to be able to be they themselves the frontliners of that security.
So I'm interested about your statement in your material. One of the sentences called Lord of Prompt. We need to be a wizard live.
Yes.
Like that. So this is maybe a question for Pavel from me. How do we actually balance a physical and digital space in our lives in terms of digital twins? Well, especially in the academic society.
That is a good question. Actually, I forgot to put one more question, which is now on Mentimeter, which is, can you estimate how many digital twins you have right now? And the answer for that, well, is we don't really know. The fact that how many places have we logged into? How many social medias do we use nowadays? How many websites have we given our data to? So this is something I was talking with a friend of mine where, you know how nowadays we live in a very capitalistic world where if a corporation comes and tells us that, hey, if you sign up as a member, you get a free coffee. And you know what? We were going to sign up and we're going to give them all our information, our date of birth, our name, our email, and just for one cup of free coffee, right? So as per the question that you asked, it is very difficult to balance because nowadays we see less of ourselves in the physical world and we are more into the digital world. We find ourselves to be so encompassed by technology. We all have, at least the majority of the world has access to the internet, access to smartphones, or access to any devices that brings us closer to each other on the internet rather than even physically. So in terms of academics, as you mentioned, the reason why students, well, of course, students would love to be online. It gives them the recognition, the exposure when they publish their papers, when they publish their blogs or or contribute to anything for their universities or write anything, that is, of course, the more positive way I'd like to look into how digital twins are established, where if I just look up John, for example, on Google Scholars, we're probably going to find a bunch of papers that are relevant to this topic, and then educate myself on the topic itself, because that's his expertise. But that's a good, I would say that's a good part of having a digital twin online, of course. But then again, like I mentioned, all the data, all the social media, my bigger concern is the fact that we live in a TikTok generation where we love browsing TikTok, but we don't know what data we're putting on it and how the algorithm works. Of course, it works by showing you, it shows you the relevant reels, but then you must be wondering, right? Okay, so the algorithm knows exactly how you're thinking. And that is magic, scary at the same time. Back to you, Aryo.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. Then there are several questions from Anne. He asking about, in the context of education, how can digital civilization support character development, not just only technical skills? This is an interesting question. Maybe John, you can answer it first.
Yes, so I don't want to spoil what's going to be one of the last slides that I'm going to be putting, because it relates to that. The only reason, let me try to rephrase it a little bit different so I don't spoil myself. The only reason why we build technology is because it serves a purpose for some humans. It's the only reason. We don't build any technology that does not serve humans. And you can think about it. I'll be very happy if anyone wants to give me counter arguments on the chat. I still have not found anyone after so many years that could actually put me an example that they believe may not be serving humans. But when you go down the line analyzing exactly what motivated that particular invention from happening, turns out it's because a certain human benefited from it. And the benefit does not have to be material. It can be emotional. So for instance, it's very clear why we invented clothing. It preserves us, it saves us, it helps us against the weather. It's very also obvious why we invented the cars and buildings and food supply chains for foods, to be able to provide food for everybody at scale. And then technology, of course, also is a very obvious solution for humans because of how it changes our lives and how it simplifies certain things. It also sometimes complicates things. I'm not saying that every single invention does not come with trade-offs. That's not my argument. What I'm saying, however, is that there would be other inventions that seem less straightforward when you think, oh, but we also save the whales. Well, the question is, did the whales ask to be saved? No, they did not sit with us and ask us. We thought it was a good idea to save the whales. And again, I'm not getting into the judgment of it. Or I'm saying that we thought that saving the whales was a good thing for the ecosystem, and we are probably right. Okay. Now, all the stuff that we invented to be able to save the whales was not requested by them. It only fulfills a desire that we have as humans to be able to do that. And so what I'm trying to go with that is you cannot detach ingenuity and technology development from human skills and from the need to be able to express things that we need. And so I don't see, I do not hold a negative view that says, oh my gosh, AI and technology is going to totally replace us. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to be able to learn how to live alongside. I think there's going to be some integration happening, whether that is for good or for bad. It's very difficult to say at the moment. I will also tell you that another argument that we give in the AI Foundation is that you are already a cyborg. And if you don't believe me, I invite you to give me your devices. I will keep them for a week. And after that week, we'll have this conversation again. You will realize that in reality, you have integrated that technology into your daily life.
Exactly.
It doesn't look as if in the movies where the Borg that has all of those cybernetic.
Yeah.
No, it's still a piece of your body that connects to you through a very, very slow and imperfect interface, which is your thumbs and your eyes. You input information, you input data into the interface through your thumbs, typically, and then you read it back with your eyes. That's not as fast as your brain thinks. Your thumbs go actually slower. And so that imperfect interface is still an interface. I don't think the technology is going away anytime soon, except if a solar flare comes. Let's not ignore that possibility. That has happened in the past, and fortunately, there was not enough technology to be affected. But if a proper solar flare from the 19th something, it was on 18, I can't remember exactly, like a few centuries ago, something like that. We have recorded it, and we know that it would have fried everything that we have right now as technology. So except if we get this kind of a reset situation, technology is not going away anytime soon. We will learn to live alongside it, just as we have learned to live alongside any other changes and challenges that we may have confronted in our lives. I don't see any problem with that.
Thank you, Jay. Interesting point of view. And if you remember that the condition about Y2K, do you remember or do you know about the Y2K?
Oh yes,
rumors?
Of course.
Yeah,
of course, yes. How much money was made with that?
Okay, that's
I'm old enough. I'm old enough to absolutely haven't gone through it. Yes.
Yeah, maybe the others don't know. Then okay, how about what do you think, Pavel, about the questions from This is maybe the good questions here. How actually digital civilization support the character development from your point of view, Pavel?
Well, I do think John has mentioned most of it. I was more interested in the other two questions that are also over there, which I have answered in the chat. But yes, so there's one question from Tahir, which is about the advancement going in the digital world. Do we really have privacy? What really is the meaning of privacy? So this is some existential questions, but I do love them. And whether or not it's actionable in court. So now the thing is, in the digital realm, in the digital world, absolute privacy is impossible because you yourself perhaps don't know where all your, like what data, no matter how protective you are, you don't know where the data is being used, no matter how secure they've tried to keep it. And of course, data is the engine of digital civilization. So privacy today means the right to control your narrative, as in you have that, at least you have that entitled to yourself on how privately you or how securely you can keep your data, and it is the power to restrict who uses your data, especially for what purpose and for how long. But then unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of these big tech, a lot of the governments ask us for data that are completely unnecessary. So this is something John and we have discussed before in regards to healthcare. So when you go to the hospital for a headache, right, and you're like, you go to the doctor and you're like, hey, I need a medicine, maybe paracetamol for a headache, and you know that it's headache, but then the hospital then collects your blood sample, collects your all the other data on your date of birth, your family history, all of that. Some of them are very unnecessary because you're just going for a simple problem, but then you have to go through the whole yellow tape of information, oversharing all these information to hospitals, which they perhaps don't really need for your particular problem, but they're going to keep it in their database regardless. So fortunately, there are some regulatory frameworks in the EU right now, especially I was talking to this guy in Switzerland. So in Switzerland, they have a healthcare framework where hospitals are only allowed to collect information that is necessary, and they're not allowed to collect anything else that is not necessary to your symptoms. So perhaps one day we can look forward to having something similar in this region, but for now, it's something that's still a long shot.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. So there are actually two terms that Jan told us to looking for. Inter, what was it again?
Interoperability and agency.
And agency.
Mm-hmm.
What is it actually?
So interoperability is going to be the objective of having as much devices being able to talk to each other, no matter the distance and no matter the in-betweens. Interoperability is what allows you to have a market that can thrive so that you can have competition between providers and that eventually you end up having the best product as possible for the final user. That competition is what makes things improve. And so if I want, for instance, I don't know, a Nokia phone with a Huawei phone with Ericsson or any other mobile phone, Sony, whatever that you want to think of, to be able to talk to each other no matter who is manufacturing them, you do require to achieve what's called interoperability. That is achieved through the communication protocols that are put together and put forward by a number of organizations at the moment. And that's essentially the same thing that you will want across different GEs, so different LLMs. All the technology that is going to be building this magical abstraction layer will require a huge amount of interoperability. Now, how is that interoperability being achieved? That's a different story. And we already predict that there's going to be quite a number of changes on how that is going to be achieved. That's again another 2-3 hours conversation outside of the scope of this session. An agency is essentially how much control do you retain over your digital twins, and it's worth mentioning that the only reason why I'm interested on a given set of ones and zeros, because let's remember the data is just a bunch of ones and zeros.
Yep.
The only reason why I have any vested interest in this bunch of ones and zeros that I have in a disk is because I know they point back at you. If I don't know who they model, I have no use whatsoever. If I tell you 5, I'm not giving you enough context to know what it means. But if I say 5 is the number of credit cards that Bismo has in his wallet, now I'm interested in Bismo. that is an information that if I'm a bad faith actor, all of a sudden he could become the target of my actions to try to steal from him, because that's an information that is relevant for me. There's also a very interesting concept or part that typically people discard when they're thinking about this. All information has a certain expiry date. And that doesn't mean that the information disappear. It's the practicality of the use of that information may disappear. For instance, going back to the example that I'm putting with Bismo, if I ever intercepted the PIN number of one of his credit cards, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to go to the ATM and use it if the credit card is 5 years old, because that PIN number will be useless at this point. They will have no practical utility. And so the information utility of it does have an expiry date based on whichever circumstance. It doesn't. There's no universal rule for it. So what I'm trying to try to convey is that don't think that data is separate from you. Your data is you, and is the only reason why they want it. In the DCDR framework, which is part of the research and development that we do in the organization, we have 3 principles, very basic ones. The first one, I am my data. That's it. And if I'm a developer, I should make sure that I am treating somebody else's data the same way that I would like to be treated. It's a very, very simple concept. Second, end remedy. The joke that I was mentioning before at the beginning of my presentation basically says that I would love to change the world, but I have no control about how the world functions. But I can do that when it comes to the technology that I built. Well, in the real world in which we live, and the lawyers in the room will know this very, very well, we live in what's called a remedial system. Should a specific crime happen, there are provisions for something to happen and to redress, to provide a compensation on the situation, okay, to try to provide remedy. Well, That basically means if someone stabs me, I have the ability to bring that person to court, and maybe that person will end up in jail, depending on the circumstances. And maybe that person will have to give me money because of the expenses that I had in the hospital, or because how many years I had to stop working, whatever. So that I'm given after the fact is what's called a remedy system. It's a compensation that is provided to me. Now the question is, do I really want the compensation, or would I have preferred to never be stabbed to begin with? Well, of course, I prefer, carry on with my life and I don't have to go through this whole ordeal. And so when you think about technology, yes, you can have remedial systems. Should someone steal your data, there has to be a way for you to rectify the situation. Yes, sure. Now, ideally, no one steals your data because they cannot. That's the preventive measure. That's the end remedy mentality. Why am I planning for remedies when I can plan for avoidance, for prevention? The problem doesn't happen to begin with, therefore, there's no problem. And the third principle is rights by design. If you live in a given jurisdiction and there is a number of regulations that says that your data should be protected, or any other regulations that have to do with technology, those should be implemented in the technology transparently from you. You should not have to, it shouldn't be an afterthought for the final user. Those are those very simple three principles to guide how technologies should be thinking about architecting and implementing technology moving forward, specifically with all that is coming with this magic abstraction layer that we were discussing.
Love you, Jen. And how do you know that I have 5 credit cards?
That's a mystery that's a secret I'm going to keep for myself. And you should be checking your SMS just to make sure what kind of questions are going to come in the next minutes for you.
Okay, then Pavel, then you can re-explain maybe the questions that asked by Mr. Echo, and how regarding the homomorphic encryptions. Please.
Right. So Echo in the chat put this question, which is very interesting, about homomorphic encryption, which allows us to make changes to encrypted data without decrypting it first. And the concept itself is very promising because, especially for data privacy, the way it works is it allows these prompt run organizations to run its algorithm on our data. So we can train the AI model or calculate a result based on the results from the AI model, but while the data remains encrypted. So as I mentioned about being only able to access necessary data that is needed for a particular activity, this is what homomorphic encryption does. It only gets the answer that it needs without ever seeing the raw input. So because, well, I believe there are a lot of computer science students here, we talk a lot about private keys and public keys in encryption, right? So this is the concept of encryption, where you can get an answer without ever seeing what private keys were exchanged, without ever seeing the raw input. And I believe that this is a big step towards getting privacy, or achieving privacy by design that we are trying to promote so much at the Aryo Foundation. And of course, at the same time, it protects your digital twin data without giving out too much data, without giving out too much data at the same time while it's being actively processed. Now, the only thing is that it is still very new and very novel. So right now, the focus is more on improving the speed on how quickly can it process the data. But at the same time, as Echo mentioned, it does need to have more research before we can commercially deploy it in the industry.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. So this is interesting notes from Ms. Iren. She said that we should be Avengers, not Avengers. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Jen? You have
yes,
something to ask? Yeah.
Do
Yes.
you think we could move to the workshop part?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Perfect. Okay, so I believe you can still see the screen. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So if everyone would like to go back again to the Mentimeter, we're going to have a number of questions over there. And I'm going to also put again the link on the chat for those of you who may not have seen it before. Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. And Pavel, do you want to go with oh, by the way, very quickly, how many digital twins you have? There weren't that many answers. I found very interesting that some people said none. 4 people think that there's no digital twins out there, and I would definitely like to know where that reasoning comes from. I mean, what has been their experience, and there's the majority sort of nailed it on we can know, and that's the reality. It's impossible to know how many copies of your data have been going around, and as Pavel mentioned, number 5 does not know that it is number 5. It cannot let you know, your age has been copied by someone else. That's not how the technology is built, and that's precisely the reason why you want to have principle number 2 in the DCDR framework. Those DCDR principles, number 2 specifically points out at that. All right, so let's go to some questions here. Pavel, can you move the Mentimeter to the first question of the workshop, please?
Yes, and John, do you think you can share it, or would you like me to share my screen?
You can share yourself.
Okay, let me just share this so that we can look at. Right, so we can look at the answers at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Is it coming up?
Sorry, it has just slowed down my computer, so I do apologize for that.
2025, we are sending Teslas to Mars. We are definitely picking up rockets with chopsticks, and we still have problems being able to launch a presentation over a Zoom call. That's the sad state of technology.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it is what it is. But as I said before, we adapt. If there is a magical ability in humans, is how adaptable we are.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think like something has happened. So if you don't mind, can I ask you
don't
to
mind.
share?
Yes, of course, I can share this thing. Hold on a second. Results here. That's not the part that I want. What I want to see is
Okay.
I'm just gonna share this.
Right. I believe people should be able to see the screen.
Please, everyone who's not on the stage, can you please mute your microphones? Thank you.
Is Irel? Excuse me. Irel? Can you mute? Can you mute? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Pavel, you may continue.
Right. So,
K-pop.
So this is one of my favorite questions, because I think this puts everyone on the spot on what data do you have that you would never want to be on the internet. So of course, I know it's a wide spectrum of data that people have, wide spectrum of answers as well. So it could perhaps go ranging from as people mentioned their banking information, of course, which is very important. You don't want people finding out. To even maybe, very embarrassing pictures, very pictures that your friends take, and it's like probably your face is morphed or something that you find to be very embarrassing and you never want anyone to see on the internet. So yes, I do believe that a lot of people worry that what if someday these pictures or this information, this data is online? What do you do? Right? So this is why this is a good question to ask yourself.
Before we continue that, supposed to be the Mentimeters are shared.
Yes, is it not showing? I'm
Yeah,
told
it's not showing.
I'm told that my screen is not showing. Let me close again the screen and force it again.
Maybe Pavel, you can stop sharing.
Actually, I'm not sharing either.
So you're not sharing anything.
And if I am,
Pavel, you may, because what I have observed is that Zoom has changed the way. Look, if there's a tab on top that says my sharing or what you're sharing, and you close that one.
Do you think it's possible to do it for me? Because for some reason,
no, I don't have control on that. I can try to reshare my screen again, see if that works.
Yep, that works, Jed.
Okay, yeah. So it requires, like I said, technology adaptation. Okay, so we can see there. Oh, Pavel, so carry on. Sorry.
No, yeah. So I guess we're still waiting for some more answers. Yes, we've got a few answers, which are a personal email. Right? Maybe there are people who have had some shady history. They wouldn't want people to find out. Banking accounts, banking information, financial information. Yes, very common answers and very correct as well. Your home address, K-pop. So I don't know. My mother's name. That is a funny one. Okay. But you can see that, yeah, private data, vids, and all that. So
I know that someone may have put the mother's name as a joke. It is actually information that can be used against you. Especially think about those security questions that you are sometimes requested to answer when you register in a service. You will have username, password, and then security question. And normally they give you a set of predefined questions. What's the name of your first pet? What's your mother's maiden name? Whatever. That can actually be used against you. Exactly. In fact, tip for security: never answer those questions with an actual answer. Treat them like just any other password.
Yeah.
Use a personal vault for your credentials, for your username and passwords, and treat those questions as if they were passwords. So answer a totally gibberish long set of mixed characters as the answer to that question, and then store it in your vault, because you don't want to be providing any such information. It can definitely I think Now You See Me 3 is in cinemas. If you watch the first part, they will have a very good example as to how that information can be weaponized against you. Pavel? Pavel? You still with us?
It's in the internet.
It could be. So, yeah, we adapt. So if we go to the next.
Yeah, next questions.
Yeah, if we go to the next question, imagine that your digital twin is a house. What's the single most important digital lock that you would install to protect it? I'm loving my MFA. Data minimization. This is another fascinating concept. For those of you who may not have heard about it, data minimization is the idea that given a specific exchange of information between me and a platform for obtaining a service or something. So for instance, me wanting to buy a book online on Amazon or any other platform, what is the minimum information that is required for that service to be performed? Which implies what kind of information is absolutely useless and not necessary for that particular transaction. So for instance, if I want to buy a book and it's going to be a physical book that will be sent to my place, I need to share with them my home address or a delivery address to the very least. But they would not need any data on my healthcare. That is not fit for purpose for that particular intention. And so data minimization is the idea that given a certain scenario, what is the minimum amount of information that is required for that scenario to be accomplished as expectations. Now, the fascinating part of that is that everyone in the industry has a mouthful about data minimization. We want data minimization here and there, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's very hard to achieve that objective if it turns out that there's no international standard on what data minimization is. And there's no standard, and there's no international standard on use case scenarios for data, which as a result means that a given provider may describe a certain set of data as what they consider the minimum and not the same in another platform. So there's no standardization for that, and there's no interoperability at that level when it comes to data management. I'm loving that most people are looking into strong passwords and multi-factor authorization. That's what MFA means. Typically, you will have 2FA in your platforms. That would be two-factor authentication. MFA would be to use more than two, essentially. And normally you use either what's the English? An authenticator or physical key or a biometric in combination of your passwords. Next question. Which online activity makes you feel the most watched or causes you the most mental fatigue of the ones that you practice?
Right. My apologies. I kind of malfunctioned. I kind of malfunctioned. The computer kind of malfunctioned over there, but I am back.
Welcome back, Pavel. When they asked for your cookies, the other day I was reading a post with someone who basically was claiming, are we done already with the cookies? Can we already assume and all accept that it was a failed experiment? And, you know, we are all tired of having to accept cookies when you visit any website. Can we move on? And the funny part is that it's a legacy technology that could have gone away a long time ago. We have solutions nowadays to not have to depend with cookies at all. It's one of those anachronic technologies that don't go away because of legacy systems. Social media algorithms, that's a very good point. You know, who gets to decide how information is disseminated? That's basically an algorithm. Which, by the way, another very interesting thing that you should be considering is that all of these bill of arguments that you were sold as to how important data is, which it is, I'm not saying it isn't, you might find interesting to think that the data does not matter as much as what you do with the data. So again, let's say, for instance, and sorry, Bismo, that I'm still using you as an example. Let's say, for instance, that I know of some bad misbehavior of Bismo that he did last week. The fact that I know about it, or some illegal thing, let's go into the extreme. The fact that I know about it does not mean that he's going to end up in jail. If I decide to go to the police and expose it, he may end up in jail. So again, the knowledge of the information is not what puts Bismo at risk. It's my decision-making process as to what I'm going to do with that information. In other words, the fact that a platform may have data of yours or have digital twins of yours does not necessarily involve or imply that they're going to do something nefarious about it. What determines how good or bad the use is going to be? The algorithm. So the most important thing that you're going to have in any system is algorithm transparency. How do you get to evaluate what is done with your data under which type of criteria and what circumstances? Okay, so video conference. I'm sorry to provide you so much stress right now, my friend, if you're here in the video conference. Using an outdated application or website, yes, I also can agree with that. Definitely cookies. I've seen at least 2 mentions on that. Social media, if social media gives you stress, just don't go into it. Next question. What is the biggest fear you have about AI making decisions about your life?
I like this question because think about it like this. We live in a world where there are AIs that when we apply to a new job, right, we submit our applications, we submit our resumes or our CVs, and then there's an AI which needs to screen through all of these applications because I don't think any human is going through them manually in today's world. So the AI goes through all of the keywords, goes through all of these phrases in your CV, right? And then very easily, it can just discard your application, no matter how long it took to do the application, no matter how significant your experiences match up with the job description. But let's say that the AI finds just one thing that is out of place and it doesn't even go through the rest of the stuff. It just completely discards it. So thinking about that does bother me. And of course, I believe that for students, it also perhaps bothers them a lot because when you're applying for admissions at a university and you're trying, maybe you're using AI to write that application, of course the university is gonna know, right? So either you can do a 50-50 and really take that risk and write that essay by yourself, or you can write a world-class essay with the help of AI, and then you may or may not still get the admission, but something to help you with it for sure.
Oh, I want to highlight one of the answers that says, I have no fear about my answer being provided by AI, as I should question the answer by myself anyway. That is probably the best take that you can have when it comes to anything in technology. As in, there is this concept called human in the loop, which is part and parcel of all this magical abstraction layer that we are trying to build in technology. And yes, you're still going to have someone having to first have the critical thinking ability to be able to evaluate whether an answer or a solution is fit for purpose. But also the fact that we don't let as many things. Let me put it this way. Everyone is concerned about AI. I actually don't understand that concern, meaning AI is nothing but software. More sophisticated software, better software than in the past. Absolutely agree. The question is, if it's more sophisticated, then what it means is that it's giving us better answers. So why are we afraid of a better answer? Is it that there was something that we were hiding, or, we were not trying to be honest about for some reason? So what it really, really means is that what you don't want is to automate without supervision the answers provided by a piece of software. In the same way that you would not automate the outputs of a newly hired person in your company that you haven't been working with for at least 6 months because you cannot make sure about the quality of the output. This is no different. The same precautions you would take with humans, you have to think about it in the same terms with advanced software that looks like humans and behaves like humans, essentially because we build and we architected them based on how the human brain functions. So of course, you're going to have outputs that resemble the behavior of a human. There was a study that was issued by one of these big LLM companies called Anthropic about 3 months ago, more or less, in which they were basically trying to see how stubborn a certain model was by trying to retrain certain areas of that model. And turns out the model was basically saying, like literally the model saying, I don't want to be updated. I mean, I'm not interested. I don't trust you. I mean, you gave me a first training set of data. That's where I created my perception of things. Now you're coming up with extra data, and my model is telling me no. Because humans are stubborn. We have modeled the way we function. It's very difficult to change somebody's mind. Try with a friend of yours, try to change their perception of whatever topic. People have those frictions. If we model software upon the way our brain functions, you're going to have, of course, the same type of features because those emanate on the nature of how things function that you are copying. So we will have, yes. Did someone ask something?
Nope, continue, Jen.
Yeah, so I think we will have time, being considerate about the time that we have. We should be finishing in about 15 minutes. I think we have time
how many questions? How many questions that we have, Jen?
Way too many. We're not going to be able to finish them all. So let's just make this last one.
Okay.
So in one word, what should be the main focus of governments when regulating AI in digital data? Just one word. Transparency. Yeah, I love that.
Perfect. Yeah.
You see, speaking about transparency, you will observe a lot of regulations going on in the world that are a little bit weird in terms of what they are trying to achieve in things such as governments attempting to dismantle all the encryption regulations and all the encryption mechanisms that we have by providing backdoors for enforcement agencies, to the police, for whatever. And there are legit reasons why you would want authorities to be able to have access to certain conversations. The question is, it's a matter of privacy. And if you want to be able to provide those kind of services to a selected amount of people to be able to do their job, to protect your life, basically avoiding, terrorist attacks or whatever it is, that has to come paired with conversations about transparency and accountability for that subset of people. Because we do have the technology to overcome the encryption problem, we also have the technology to overcome the transparency and accountability problem. How come those conversations are never in the same sentence? They always talk about more and more control and more, being able to decrypt everybody's conversation, but no one is ever saying, don't worry, we are also putting together a system so that as a final user, you are able to see if anyone ever have access to things. Think about it. In the case of the US, for instance, there is a mechanism for the enforcement agencies to request your personal data if they suspect that you may have engaged into illegal activities. They have to go to court. A judge needs to provide the authorization. So there's the human in the loop. And then the platform will provide the information to the enforcement agency. Now, the interesting part is that the law in the US says that after 6 months of that request, the platform has to send you a notification that this particular agency requested for your personal data. So the legit part is, I suspect this person may have been engaging in child trafficking. Of course, I want that person to be investigated. I have no problem on that person being investigated. However, I want, if the investigation goes nowhere, if that person was innocent and it was just a misunderstanding or it was a misguidance or whatever reason, that person should have the right to be told after the fact, after the case is closed, listen, this happened. I think that's fair, so that you know that your data has been investigated and in that situation, and that you've been cleared out. So, those balances at the moment are not necessarily something that politicians and regulators have in mind. And that's kind of a shame, because we do have the technology to do everything at the same time, or at least try to find a compromise balance on it. All right, so transparency, safety, education. Yes, there's no such thing as moving forward without education. Compliance. The only thing that you're going to be compliant about is those things that you decide are going to be passed as laws. So as a citizen, even if you're not a technologist, you do have a responsibility to make sure what kind of regulations are going to be applied in your own country, in this case, Indonesia, but the same goes for every single country in the world. Confidentiality, yes, has a lot to do with privacy. Provide lots of jobs. That's likely happening. It's just we're going to have a huge shift on what those jobs are going to look like. I don't believe that there's going to be a full erasure. I think the problem is not going to be the full erasure. I think it's going to be the speed. Because there's always been changes of work, of job descriptions in 200, 300 years. I think the speed at which those changes were happening allowed for the new jobs to be generated and educated for. So whatever you require to change from one field to another, the time for you to learn that new craft was possibly an option, a doable option in the past. And now as things go so fast, I don't know we're going to be catching. I don't think it's because jobs will disappear. I think it's because we're not going to be able to catch up on time for the needs of those new jobs. All right, so we're going to take it there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I would like to do a closing though, if it's possible.
Sure.
So allow me to stop this screen again. My screen, cancel here, open again. I don't know this Zoom thing, why they made it so difficult now. Is it coming back?
Yeah.
Okay, we see. All right. Okay, so 3 advices before we leave. Read a lot, write a lot, and learn another language. It doesn't matter if you're a technologist. It doesn't matter what's your field. If you're going to be becoming a wizard in prompting, those are the 3 skills that are going to provide you with what you need to be able to extract the information from the black box of your head, put it into the right words, aka the right prompt, and provide it to whoever is listening to you. Either it is a person, either it is a technology. Do not write with your keyboard. Do the actual action of writing. It actually allows for your ideas to flow better. This is the way you're going to be able to express yourself better. And finally, next up, for those of you who may be interested in the things that we are doing and the research that we're doing and the activities that we're doing, next up, we're going to have a number of internships coming up. Since you are in the university, you may also want to be looking into those. There is 2 fellowships that are going to be happening next year in the first month. So February, we have Apricot, which happens in Jakarta, Indonesia. This is a magnificent opportunity for all of you who is in IT, specifically network operations, computer science in general. This is the Asia Pacific meeting for network operators, and we're going to have an in-person fellowship for this. And then IETF, which is the Internet Engineering Task Force, that is the organization who maintains the protocols that make possible the internet. And they will have a meeting 125 in Shenzhen, China in March. And we're also preparing a fellowship for that. And in this case, it will be both in person, but also online. So those of you who wouldn't have the opportunity to go to China, you can still participate. We can still help you to be able to understand how that critical organization functions and how to participate into those protocols. And then we will also be discussing and opening a number of clubs, Argos clubs in Indonesia. And if you be interested on any of that, you should be getting in touch with us. And the best way to do so is here. If you could give us a feedback and attach your email address, we'll be providing you with information in the coming days on all of those items. And you also help us to make sure that we can improve our sessions moving forward. I know it's always tedious to do feedbacks at the end of a session. They really are very, very helpful for anyone who's taking seriously the kind of sessions that they are providing. We do consider that we have a responsibility towards this. You've been spending some almost 2 hours with us. If we haven't made it fun for you and you haven't learned something and you haven't gone back home with more questions, we haven't done our job properly. So we need to know so we can make it better next time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for Jen and Pavel as we come to the end of today's session. I would like to sincerely thanks to our speaker, Mr. Jan and Mr. Pavel, for their valuable contributions. And hopefully your insights have deepened our understanding of digital things, IoT system, and the human dimension of technology. To all participants, please do not forget to fill out the exit ticket. Maybe Mbak Dinar can help us for showing the exit ticket. And for Jen, you can stop sharing.
Yes, I will try again because this thing.
You'll try again.
My gosh. Where is my
Okay,
screen?
there it is. Yeah, it's already changed into.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And this is the exit ticket, guys. Then before you go, we want to take a group photo before. Then please turn on your camera. You can. You can take a picture. There's almost 500 participants in the Zoom right now. Maybe from the committee, Adina can help to take a picture. Maybe we have several pages. Okay, let's start. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Second page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the third page. 1, 2, 3. Maybe we stop for page 5, yeah. Page 4. 1, 2, 3. Page 5. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Jane and Pavel. Di share linknya ada di share screen. Nurul, silakan. Thank you for Jen and Pavel for the insights. And Pavel and Jen, you know my credit cards and you did know what I did.
I know what you did last summer. Yes. Full disclosure, okay. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much.